We are those guys. Hey, you see these guys over there? Well, don't forget about those guys. I'm Alex Hardy, joined as always, former 10-year NFL safety. He is Nick Ferguson. Nick, my man, we are here right after Thursday Night Football for week 14 already. The Detroit Lions 44, Dallas Cowboys 30. I'll just say my piece and get on out of here. I'm not really a betting man, although if you want me to tell you about my prop bets that hit tonight, I'm happy to do so. But the kind of game in prime time where it feels to me the Detroit Lions get backed up against the wall and they scratch and they claw and they bite kneecaps and they know how to win these football games. Meanwhile, the Dallas Cowboys rattle off 3 in a row. All of a sudden, Jerry's trade deadline acquisitions make up for let's say an underperforming first half of the season, but they always seem to crumple up when they need these kinds of wins. That's kind of how I looked at this game going in, and frankly, that Dallas defense allowing 44 points, that's how I came out of it. How did you see it, Nick? And good to see you, my man. What's going on?
Good to see you as well. Basically, what I get out of it is that no one played defense on Thursday Night Football on
True.
either side of the ball. And even though Dak Prescott, from a yardage standpoint, was superiorly better than Jared Goff, he had those 2 interceptions, and Jared Goff is thinking like, well, I don't need to do all that. I just
Right.
need to hand the ball back to Sonic and get Jahmyr Gibbs on the board. 3 rushing touchdowns. And I watched it from a defensive standpoint. Look, I don't have any skin in the game as far as the Cowboys are concerned, but being a former defensive player, I was a little upset about how those guys filled those gaps and actually tried to maintain their run, lane integrity. So this is going to be a bigger issue. And right now, both of those teams were kind of competing to kind of keep their playoff hopes alive. But Detroit is saying, don't put the final nail in the coffin. And even though their defense and their secondary isn't much better than that of the Dallas Cowboys, in my opinion, the one thing that they can say, we can play ball control offense, right? You may be throwing the ball all across the yard, but we have 2 reliable backs that we can hand the ball off to, and we can grind down the clock with the 4-minute offense, and we can still score explosive plays in our run game. Even though you think about Amon-Ra St. Brown was coming into this game, coming off a sore ankle, and he still made a couple of plays. So, Dan Campbell and his team, biting the kneecaps and all of that, which I happen to love, but they're telling you that we are a scrappy team, and we're really ready to take you to the woodshed if we need to.
Is that a big deal? Amon-Ra playing on that ankle, didn't practice all week, game time decision, really kind of doubted it, but as a former player, Nick, your perspective, is that rare? Is that he's got that dog in him? Amon-Ra off that ankle, finished 6 catches for 92 yards, including a nice 37-yarder to ice that. Does that happen often, Nick?
Yeah, it happens often. You are wide receiver number 1, and your team is in desperate needs for a W to keep their playoff hopes alive. And no, you're not going to.
I think the number, just to let you know, the number I had seen in some analytic neighborhoods, if they had lost this game, Detroit, I think it would have been about a 14% chance of them making the playoffs.
Well, yeah.
I'll look up the number now as you go.
Right. So the idea is that, he's your wide receiver number 1. He's not going to practice throughout the week because you want to make sure that he's healthy. He's going to do a lot of standing on the sideline, a lot of walkthroughs. He's a veteran wide receiver, and you're going to find a way to get him involved with the game. And guess what? With the marvels of modern day medicine, you too can get out there and play Alex on a sprained ankle a couple of days later on a short week, right? So this is what we know. And the idea was that, hey, listen, if you can get out there and you can give us 65% of what we normally get out of you, which they did, and they gave him some easy catches, some slant and some intermediate routes across the middle to make it easier for him as far as being a target. Yeah, man, we get about 10 days rest. So yeah, get on out there. Doctors, give him what he needs, and we're going to make sure that we get the W because we're worried about everything else later. Let's just kick the can down the road. And right now, they have 10 days from their next game, and they have a W, and they're still in the playoff hunt.
45% chance of making the playoffs now. The Detroit Lions are. They've got the Rams coming up 10 days from now. So that is going to be a game we will talk about right here on those guys. Meanwhile, the Dallas Cowboys 6-1. CeeDee Lamb goes out of this game with a concussion after a very robust 6 for 121. In the modern NFL, this world that we live in, a concussion likely rules you out for the following week. We'll
Sure
see
does.
how that operates with CeeDee Lamb. The couple extra days, I'm not so sure, but their season is, more or less in the tank. I mean, look, they draw the Minnesota Vikings in prime time a week from now, or a week from Sunday, I should say. So maybe that might be one of those episodes where we talk about some of the earlier games in the day. So as for the rest of week 13 in the rear view, now that we have week 14 opened up, you and I, Nick, we were not here on, let's say, Thursday, for example, because we were certainly thankful, among being with our families and having our Thanksgiving dinner, thankful that both of our teams won in prime time. Your Denver Broncos 10-2, my New England Patriots 11-2. They've got the bye this week. Not so bad, not a place that you hate to be. But come week 14, Nick, the Patriots aren't playing, and the Broncos have the Raiders. So it's like they're not playing either. I think for now we can at least put a pin in our teams, but some week 14 matchups as we continue to open up the rest of this schedule and the playoff pictures start to form. You already have us bringing in numbers and playoff odds for teams like the Detroit Lions. Pittsburgh and Baltimore, one of those teams has to make the playoffs, don't they? However, both 6-6. They both got here in dramatically different fashions. Does the noise surrounding Mike Tomlin's status and the uncertainty within that ironclad organization for Pittsburgh sort of play favorites with the Baltimore Ravens, who are nearly a touchdown favorite come Sunday?
Well, this is a division game, and what I knew during my playing days is the black and blue division. So these games are always tough, especially between these two organizations, when you think about the coach's history. And usually when we get down to the playoffs, it's either the Baltimore Ravens eliminate the Steelers or vice versa. And you're absolutely right. The way this season started, it seemed as though the Ravens were left for dead. All we had to do is put the nail in the coffin and throw the dirt on top of the coffin. But they said, wait a minute, hold on, pump me brakes for a second. Our fearless leader has returned in Lamar Jackson and has turned some things around for them offensively. Now, as it pertains to the Pittsburgh Steelers, that is another question because you had Aaron Rodgers getting injured, then you had Mason Rudolph going in for a couple of games. And also, too, DK Metcalf was your only wide receiver other than Pat Freiermuth, so much so that the veteran wide receiver Adam Thielen, who was let go earlier this week by the Minnesota Vikings, he ends up where? On the roster of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is it enough to help them in this moment of desperation? You say no. Hey, let's let it play out because sign me up. I want to see what it looks like, right? I want to see what this train wreck looks like. And you brought up something very interesting. Like the Steelers have always been an organization that had great leadership. They've only had 3 head coaches in their franchise history, which is
Maybe not the franchise history. How about their franchise in my lifetime, for example, or even your lifetime?
Well, they only had 3. 2 of them I know, Tomlin, and you had I'm drawing blank on his name. Bill Cowher, right? The Chin. And then obviously, I knew of Chuck Noll back in the day because when I was much younger, I was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. That's beside the point. But the idea is that the whole thing was it's built on a certain culture. Running the ball, playing great defense, and having great coaches. But the one thing that you never do, you never hear on any Pittsburgh team, whether it was Cowher, Noll, or even Tomlin, not until now, mutiny, right?
Right.
And mutiny from his former players. I think you mentioned James Harrison before we started, and I posted something about Ben Roethlisberger saying, I think it's time to move on from Mike Tomlin. And I'm like, ooh, man, if you're going to move on.
Well, not only that, he thought the best idea for Tomlin, not the NFL, send him over to Happy Valley and have him coach at Penn State, who, look, we're not a college football podcast, but the way that they've handled their coaching search, after firing James Franklin, who less than a year ago had you 3 points away from
Yeah,
a national championship game. Look,
absolutely.
I'm not going to defend him now. I'm not going to use hindsight to say, you know, of course they didn't find any better when they thought they could have, but it is just so like like the mediocrity from a Mike Tomlin team that we've experienced is better than what like it's the devil you know versus the one that you don't know. And I think people want to see the Steelers change. And before it was just fans, right? They're booing Renegade at the games. Like I don't like Sticks either, but they're booing, their rally cry. They're chanting "Fire Mike Tomlin." But James Harrison went scorched earth, saying that the defense doesn't look like a Pittsburgh Steelers defense. It's trash. It's garbage. It's, Mike Tomlin is responsible for all of this. And for Harrison and Big Ben to say things like that, and they're not the only ones. I heard an interview, Bruce Arians says it's time for him to go after calling plays for Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh years ago. So there's a lot of smoke, and, Tomlin, I think, has the assurance from the Rooney family, regardless of how we feel about it. If it's time for a new voice, fine, but at the very least, you can't just run back Arthur Smith and Terrell Austin, and they've had talented coaches on that staff. Brian Flores walking away, among others. It's so hard to see a team that goes 5-1, drop the 6-6, and they're still the exact same team they were, despite losing, 5 in a row, basically.
Well, Alex, I know the person at the top always catches all the strays, but I would also say, well, this is not totally all on Mike Tomlin, because you mentioned,
my bad, 4-1, and
okay,
they've lost 3 of their last 4.
well, you think about personnel issues, right? They never really found a quarterback after Ben Roethlisberger's left, and
Well, yeah,
that's
that's
something.
part of it.
Okay, that's something every team has gone through, because your Patriots and my Broncos both have endured the same thing until they found their young quarterbacks. For you, Drake May; for the Denver Broncos, Bo Nix; but for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who's that guy? And then if
It's
James
tough.
Harrison,
It's tough.
yeah, if James Harrison is talking about the defense, I get it. They're not the same defense. Hell, the Baltimore Ravens are not the same defense. But it goes
No.
back to who's buying the grocery, as Bill Parcells would talk about, because this Steelers team isn't the same. They don't have some of the same players. Now they have this makeshift secondary that they were hoping with Jalen Ramsey would turn things around, but that has not been the case. But I will
But that's
say,
part of it. I mean, he's one of the most expensive defensive backs in the National Football League. This is by far the most expensive defense in the league, and they are not performing. Like, that was where they pushed all their chips in, because since post Roethlisberger, they don't pay for a quarterback, which I would say roughly 31 other teams believe in a different philosophy. You find the quarterback, you pay him. So this was a decision of their own making. These are the defensive players that'll put us over the edge, and they've gotten worse.
yeah, but you say, okay, find a quarterback and you pay him. I mean, who was that guy? They drafted Mason Rudolph. He wasn't a guy. Then it was Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was Kenny Pickett, sure. I'm just saying, like, this offseason, they waited until the end of June because Aaron Rodgers would have preferred to have been in Minnesota, but he sells for Pittsburgh. They pay Russell Wilson the league minimum because the Denver Broncos are footing the bill on that. I'm not saying Sam Darnold or Kirk Cousins or they could have spent more money in free agency and see what could have happened there. They just made it their MO to make sure that they sign a quarterback late and for less money than what was the going rate for a top free agent. Or, the reason I throw out free agency is because they're not picking 3rd overall like the New England Patriots are. Shoot, they're not even picking 10th overall or 11th overall, 12th overall like the Denver Broncos were. They're never going to bottom out that way. So that's why I'm pointing to free agency.
So that's the thing. So what's happening, and you bring me right back to my point I wanted to make, because what we're hearing from former Steelers players, the Pittsburgh media and the fan base who are becoming, louder as we go along, is that they have been victimized by their own success. So many years of success under 3 head coaches. And when you look at Mike Tomlin, he's made the playoffs, but he hasn't really moved the needle as far as winning a playoff game. And Pittsburgh Steelers fans are used to winning games in the postseason and having a postseason appearance. So now they're saying, well, just getting to the playoffs it's not good enough for us. We need
Right.
to make some noise. But I'm sure there's 31 other teams that would feel different. I'll tell you this. I mean, the Broncos just got to the playoffs last year and was bounced in the first round to the Buffalo Bills. You know how many Broncos fans were clamoring just to take a peek at the playoffs? But what we're seeing from the Pittsburgh Steelers faithful and the players is, guess what? They've been victimized by their own success. That's the problem that they're having, because just like Penn State, right? You can get rid of a coach like they got rid of James Franklin. Who else you bringing in there? So if you get rid of Mike Tomlin, you better have a guy that you're going to bring in. And if they do get rid of Mike Tomlin, whomever comes in probably only lasts maybe 2 or 3 years at the most.
I think the expectations in Happy Valley were a lot higher because they've never been better than Ohio State and Michigan. And the reality with Pittsburgh is within the last decade, they've never been better than Kansas City or, as we saw this past week, Buffalo, a 42-year-old quarterback with the lowest completions of his NFL career. And a month ago, the Steelers were talking about bringing Rodgers back next year. That's a team that's in search of many, many things. I do give the edge to Baltimore for this weekend. The defense has gotten better. I think Kyle Hamilton has essentially held that defense together all by himself. I noticed that when he's been playing more in the box, they've become one of the best run defenses in the NFL, which is critical to shutting down what the Steelers want to do, especially with Jalen Warren less than 100%. So I do give the edge to Baltimore, not just this Sunday, but for the division as well. I mean, look, I didn't expect Cincinnati to be hanging around with Joe Burrow coming back the way that he did and how they played, beating this Ravens team on Thanksgiving, but they don't have they have a tough task with Baltimore. The Ravens take care of business against Pittsburgh. They easily have a 2-game lead within the AFC North. The other division battle, AFC South, Jacksonville Jaguars, Indianapolis Colts. I kind of lean Jacksonville. Is it really just because Daniel Jones still has that fractured leg? Like, what are your expectations for both of these teams that, I think have never put 4 quarters together, especially Jacksonville, if I'm kind of leaning towards them this weekend?
Well, both teams bring into this week's game, really physical run game. So you got Travis Etienne for the Jags and Jonathan Taylor for the Colts. So if you ask me, well, which back would I trust more? I'm
Well,
going to go with Jonathan Taylor,
sure.
right? And even if you have a Daniel Jones who's nursing somewhat of a leg injury, I mean, it is stifling his mobility, but the one thing he can do and do at a high level is ball distribution. Now, they have some wide receivers that are good at the tight end position. Now you're wondering, okay, well, can their defense actually, hold up for them? And, Jacksonville has definitely turned the corner. And for
Yeah.
those individuals who have been criticizing Trevor Lawrence saying that he is a bust, I don't think that he's a bust. For him, he doesn't have as many weapons around him as a guy like Daniel Jones. But even with all that being said, even with the injury to Daniel Jones' leg, I think they have more firepower offensively. So I think the Colts overtake the Jags.
I like it. The Jags are riding the 3-game win streak. They always seem to have the Colts number at home. The stat is the Colts have not won in Jacksonville since 2014. So I think there's some sort of head games that factor into it, even though the players change. And obviously there's nobody left from 2014 for these teams now. But Jacksonville has had the better defense so far this season. They've been aggressive. They have a ton of takeaways, and they get after the quarterback who, look, impacted with a leg injury. I think that's going to be a very intriguing game, even if most people think, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, not necessarily the sexiest markets or sexiest teams, but they are vying for the AFC South. I mean, with the number 1 defense in the NFL, the Houston Texans, who get Kansas City at Arrowhead in prime time. It's going to be one of those cold weather games, Nick. Is this a playoff preview if Houston can sort of make some magic here? Or, look, Kansas City is fighting for their lives. They might not even make the postseason with this win, but your guy, DeMeco Ryans, and this Texans team could give the KO to KC.
Yeah, that's kind of my overall prediction of the outcome of this game, because KC is on the ropes. We've never seen them like this. I mean, we've seen them in years past, and we have to go back in history for that.
Right.
But as of recently with Patrick Mahomes on the center, we haven't really seen KC in these types of situations where they're finding themselves on the outside looking in. And I'll say this, I mean, the Chiefs, they haven't figured things out as
No.
far as their run game is concerned. You have
A quick question for the
Yeah.
run game. When you put your starting left tackle, Josh Simmons, your starting right tackle, Trey Smith, and your swing backup right tackle, Jawan Taylor, on IR, is that good for a running game? Is that good against a Will Anderson, Danielle Hunter-led pass rush, Nick?
no, it's not. But here's what I do: I trust Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in his play calling, and he's one of the better coaches in understanding. Okay, well, if we are deficient in one specific area of the game, how do we enhance that? How do we turn that weakness into a strength? So that means moving the pocket for Patrick Mahomes. We're going to see more layered routes. We're going to see him getting more so outside the pocket, where you're giving him opportunities to make plays on the perimeter. And that means attacking either Danielle Hunter or Will Anderson to kind of nullify them in some kind of way, or better yet, finding a way to chip those players before the pass route guys, being the tight ends, actually go and run into the route concepts. So this is going to be a very interesting game, but I give the nod to the Houston Texans based on their defense. Their defense has been playing sensational all season long. They're one of the top defensive units in the league. And if I know DeMeco Ryans like I know him, to me, he loves that as a coach, and he loves that being the team's identity. And what that means is that potentially you get takeaways and stops, and you give CJ Stroud another opportunity, being as though this would be his second full week starting, coming off of a hiatus from concussions.
So that wraps up the AFC South and our Sunday night preview. Meanwhile, let's circle back. If we watch the Detroit Lions make way against the Dallas Cowboys, they still sit third in the NFC North because the Chicago Bears and Green Bay Packers 1-2 facing off on Sunday. Nick, despite how well the Chicago Bears have played, especially how dominant they were against Philadelphia and almost 300 rushing yards against that Eagles front on Black Friday, they now turn around, and the Green Bay Packers are the heavy favorite in this one. How do you see these two against one another? And does it seem like it's time to give Chicago their flowers? Because it still doesn't seem like they've earned that.
Well, I've given them definitely their flowers, especially looking at what Ben Johnson was able to do in his first year. And just think
Yeah.
about just a year ago, people were criticizing Caleb Williams and they didn't take him. And then you had all these off the field criticism as far as what he was doing in his personal life. But the guy's gone out there and he's made plays, and his mobility, the one thing that he was criticized for in his rookie year, is now paying dividends, because his ability to escape the pocket and make plays on the move has definitely helped the team out. Now, the question is, will Roma Dunze actually be able to go in this particular game? Because if he's not, that's going to hinder the offense in their vertical passing game. But like you said, against Philly, they were saying, what the hell with it? We got two 100-yard rushers, and to me, they can lean on that, because DeAndre Swift, even though he's been banged up this season, he's put on some great performances. And the thing for me, being a fantasy owner, in the games that I don't start him, he goes off. And then when I put him into the game, then he falls off. So I haven't mastered that part of it yet. But this is a Bears team that is and has surprised a lot of people. And don't be surprised and don't be shocked and shaken if they end up beating the Green Bay Packers on Sunday.
The first two rushers for the Chicago Bears to have 100 yards in a game since Walter Payton and Matt Suey.
Matt Suey. Okay.
1985. Anything good happen to the Bears that year? I'm not sure. Let's stay in the present. Chicago's defense, meanwhile, lead the NFL in takeaways, lead the NFL in plus minus margin for turnovers, Did I say that right? Turnover margin. There we go.
Yes.
That's the one. Uh, so, look, if this stays close like it had in the previous season, I think both of these games came down to game-winning field goals. These teams are going to get a good look at each other. 2 matchups against each other in the next 14 days. I'm just excited to see, this one is important, but I feel like the one a couple weeks from now will be the most important as we kind of finalize the NFC North. And really, these 2 teams, along with Philadelphia and Seattle, are setting the pace in the NFC and the LA Rams, sure. As soon as we crown a team, by the way, Nick, we watch them get beat, right? The LA Rams were the best team in the NFC, only to get clowned on by the Carolina Panthers. Philadelphia Eagles smashed by the Chicago Bears. So I'm not ready to anoint anyone if you're not ready, because it seems like this NFL season, Nick, the more you think you know about a team, the less you actually know about them.
Yeah, I'm not ready to crown a team until there's the last 2 weeks of the season, and even then,
Okay.
I may be a little hesitant because this year has just been that type of season on either the AFC or the NFC. Because coming into the season, everyone had their predictions as far as which teams are going to be there at the bitter end, and some of the teams that we thought were going to be there are not actually there. Just look at the NFC South. I mean, you just talked about the Carolina Panthers, who just defeated the Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford, and the Rams, a team that, I mean, we were saying, oh, that team's going to get the number 1 seed. And we thought Dave Canellas and Bryce Young, well, it was time to put those 2 out to pasture because nothing was going to really change. No one had high expectations for that Carolina team. But we've seen they've beat a couple of teams. They beat the Falcons. They beat the Rams. They've beaten the Dallas Cowboys. Right? So they show that, hey, we're not going anywhere anytime soon. And then, oh, by the way, you look in the South, well, what can we make Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Yeah.
So, and I know it's a cliche saying any given Sunday, but watching some of these games, man, you're pulling your hair out because the typical blue bloods that we would normally talk about, they're fighting for their football playoff lives now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, really, look, the South is fascinating. Like the Bucs and Panthers both sitting there with 7 wins. Like there's really no way to figure it out. And frankly, the amazing part is that there's only 5 teams eliminated from postseason contention. So this thing is still wide open. I do know that 10 days from now, the New England Patriots have themselves an opportunity, if they beat Buffalo at home in Foxborough, can clinch the AFC East. So that's a scenario that I will look forward to when we come back following week 14. We are those guys. Don't forget these guys. Don't forget us either. I'm with Nick Ferguson. I'm Alex Hardy. We'll be back following the week 14 action. Nick Ferguson, on our way out, what do you have to say to the people?
No matter what they tell you, no matter how thirsty you are, please never drink seawater.
But salt water is good in moderation.
Well, I don't know if you want to drink that kind of salt water. Like salt water in your home, yes. Salt water from the ocean, maybe not.
What about a saltwater swimming pool?
No. You know what people do in swimming pools? No. If it's not coming from your home, don't drink it.
But if you can't do it in your own home, where can you?
Well, especially not in someone else's home, for sure. At least you can trust your own water. I'm not trusting anyone else's water, especially seawater at that. Especially, I mean, you live by the ocean. The ocean is.
I was gonna say you're really worried about that ocean up there in Denver, Colorado, Mile High.
Yeah,
real worried.
Well, see, that was for the listeners, not for me. We don't have that. We have freshwater springs. Yes, you can bottle our water